The movers were done by noon. Tom Briggs stood in the hallway of a house he no longer owned and watched the last of the furniture go through the front door. The sofa he had bought for their first anniversary. The dining table they had eaten 10,000 meals at. The artwork Claire had chosen and he had paid for without complaint because she had good taste and he had loved her. And at the time, those two things had felt like enough. All of it went into the truck. He was left with what his lawyer had called personal effects. The clothes upstairs, a box of books, his car, which was 3 years old and would need its brakes looked at before winter, and in the corner of the garage which the movers had walked past without interest, an old metal toolbox. It was his father's. Heavy-gauge steel, painted red originally, now mostly rust and old grease and the specific patina of something that had been used hard for 40 years. The latch had been sticky since Tom was a teenager. The handle had been repaired twice with electrical tape. Claire hadn't wanted it. She had been specific about that during the settlement negotiations. Her lawyer had actually listed it in the document under items of no material value, awarded respondent by mutual consent. Items of no material value. Tom had almost laughed when he read that. He picked up the toolbox. He walked out of the house. He did not know, standing in that driveway with everything gone, that the rusted box in his hands was the only thing from his old life worth keeping. He did not know that 2 years later, Claire's attorney would call his attorney with a settlement offer, not for money, for the box. And the question that matters, the question that explains why a woman who had just taken a 7-bedroom house and a commercial property portfolio and a company worth £8 million would want a rusty toolbox. That question is what this story is about. I need you to like this video before we go any further. Seriously. Those likes are what makes stories like this reach people who need them. Hit it now. Subscribe too, it's completely free. And drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. Now let me tell you about Tom. Tom Briggs was 44 years old and had spent most of his adult life making things with his hands. Not metaphorically, literally. He had trained as a furniture maker at 19, apprenticed under a craftsman in his home county for 4 years, then set up on his own at 23, with a workshop in a rented unit, and a skill that was genuine, and a reputation that grew slowly and entirely through word of mouth. He had been good at it, not famous, not wealthy in any obvious sense, good. The kind of craftsman people sought specifically because they had heard from someone that this man built things that lasted, that had character, that would be in the family in 30 years and still be worth something. He had met Claire at a craft fair where he was demonstrating joinery techniques. She stopped at his stall and asked questions that were genuinely curious, about the wood, about the process, about what he found in the work that kept him doing it. He had told her, more honestly than he usually told strangers, that it made him feel like he was continuing something, that his father had built furniture, that his grandfather had built furniture, that there was a line running through his family that he was part of, and making things with his hands was how he felt it. She had listened. She had come back to the stall twice more during the day. They had dinner that evening. He had fallen for her completely, which was something he had not previously been in the habit of doing, and which had therefore arrived with the particular force of things that are new. Claire Brooks, she had kept her own name throughout the marriage and reclaimed it immediately after the divorce, which Tom had noticed but not said anything about, was 41 and had grown up in a wealthy family in a way that had shaped her understanding of value and loss in very specific ways. She was not a cruel person, that is important to say. She was not vindictive or calculated or consciously unkind. She was a person who had grown up in a world where money was the primary language of importance, and who had, without necessarily intending to, imported that language into her marriage. She had found Tom charming at the beginning. The craftsmanship, the authenticity, the groundedness of a man who made tangible things with his hands and found that satisfying. These qualities had attracted her. Later, they had frustrated her, not because they had changed, but because she had. She had started her own commercial property consultancy 3 years into the marriage, which had grown quickly and significantly. And as her professional world expanded, more status, more income, more rooms full of people who operated at a certain level, Tom had remained exactly what he had always been. She had not left him for someone else. She had left him because she had decided that the life she was building did not contain him anymore. And she had been honest enough with herself about this to say it directly, rather than manufacture a different reason. Her lawyer had been exceptional. Tom's lawyer had been adequate. The outcome had reflected this. She had the house, the investment property, the company Tom had started, not the furniture workshop, But a small manufacturing firm he had spent 6 years building after the workshop outgrew its original model that employed 12 people and had contracts with 4 hotel chains. She had not wanted the toolbox. It had not occurred to her to want the toolbox. Tom moved into a 1-bedroom flat above a hardware shop in a town 20 minutes from where he had spent the past 15 years. It was small. It was clean. The landlord was a retired builder named Roy who charged a fair rent and asked no unnecessary questions and occasionally left vegetables from his allotment on Tom's doorstep, which Tom found both practical and oddly moving. He put the toolbox in the corner of the flat's small kitchen, where there was no workshop and nowhere particular to put it, but where it sat on the floor and was present, which felt important. He had money. The settlement had left him with enough to live for a year without working, though he knew that sitting still for a year would cost him more than money. He had applied for work. The manufacturing firm he had built was gone, but his skills were not gone. His reputation, the quiet, word-of-mouth reputation of someone who builds things well, had not gone either. Within 3 months, he had enough small commissions to keep busy. Individual pieces, bespoke orders, the kind of work he had started with at 23. It was humbling. It was also, he discovered, clarifying. Stripped of the management, the payroll, the contracts, the years of accumulation, stripped back to a man with tools and a skill, he found that the work still did what it had always done. It made him feel like he was continuing something. He had not opened the toolbox, not properly. He had opened the lid twice to check the contents. His father's tools, organized in the way his father had organized them, each implement in its designated position, with the specific intentionality of someone who believed that caring for tools was part of respecting the work. He had looked at them. He had felt the grief of his father's absence, which was 7 years old and had not diminished much. He had closed the lid both times. On a Tuesday evening in month 4, he was looking for a particular chisel, and he opened the toolbox properly. Not just the lid, but the internal tray, the shallow section that lifted out to reveal a deeper compartment beneath. He had done this 100 times as a child. He knew this box like a familiar landscape, but the lower compartment was heavier than it should have been. He lifted the tray. Beneath the tray, folded into a waterproof sleeve that his father had clearly placed there deliberately and with care, were drawings, not loose sketches. Architectural quality technical drawings, precise, measured, annotated in his father's careful handwriting. Furniture designs, not ordinary ones. A complete collection of original designs his father had developed over 30 years of making. Chairs, tables, cabinet systems, bed frames, a modular shelving architecture that Tom had never seen his father actually build, but which was drawn out with the completeness of something fully developed and never executed. There were 47 drawings. Tom sat on the kitchen floor of his flat above the hardware shop and spread them out around him one by one and felt something that was not quite grief and not quite joy, but lived somewhere between them. The specific emotion of finding something from someone you loved that you didn't know existed. That proves they were even more than you understood them to be. His father had been a craftsman. Tom had known that. He had not known his father was also this. He picked up one of the drawings, a dining chair, minimal, precise, with a joinery detail in the back that was genuinely new, genuinely original, the kind of solution to a structural problem that you either see or you don't. He read the annotation. For when the time is right, his father had written, for you if you ever need them. Tom sat with that for a long time. Then he went to his workbench. Like this video right now, you can see where this is going, and it is going somewhere extraordinary. That like button is right there and it costs nothing. Hit it. Subscribe if you haven't. And drop your location in the comments. Where in the world are you watching from? Now watch what Tom builds. Tom spent 3 months making the chair. Not because it took 3 months. He could have completed it faster. But he was doing something he had not done since his father died, which was going slowly enough to actually understand what he was building. He was reading the drawings the way you read something written by someone who is no longer there to explain themselves, which requires patience and attention, and the willingness to sit with not knowing until the answer becomes visible. The chair, when it was finished, was extraordinary. Tom knew this without arrogance. He had been in this craft for 25 years. And he knew the difference between good work and exceptional work. The design was exceptional. The joinery detail his father had conceived was one of those solutions that, once seen, seems obvious, but nobody had seen it before. He knew this because he looked and found no comparable approach in any reference he had access to. He photographed the chair. He sent the photograph to a designer he respected named Marcus Webb, who had been in the furniture industry for 30 years and whose opinion Tom trusted precisely because it was never automatic. Marcus called him the same day. "Where did this come from?" he said. Tom told him about the drawings, about his father, about the lower compartment of the toolbox. Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Tom," he said, "how many designs?" 47. A longer pause. "Can I come and see them?" Marcus arrived the following Thursday. He spent 4 hours with the drawings. He asked questions. He made notes. He sat with several of the designs for long stretches without saying anything, which Tom had learned was a good sign from Marcus. He went quiet when something required genuine thought. At the end of 4 hours, Marcus put his pen down. "These are patentable," he said. "Several of them address structural problems in furniture design that the industry has been working around for years. The modular shelving system alone." He stopped. "Tom, has anyone else seen these?" "No." "Does anyone else know they exist?" "My ex-wife's lawyer listed the toolbox as items of no material value." Marcus looked at him for a long moment. "Right," he said. "You need a patent attorney, and then we need to talk about what you do with these." What Tom did with them took 18 months to build, and the word built is the right one. He filed patents on 11 of the designs, the ones that represented genuinely new approaches. He found a manufacturer willing to work on a royalty basis with the designs. He found a retail partner through Marcus's introduction. He built a brand around the 47 drawings and the story behind them, not sentimentally, not as a marketing exercise, but because the story was true, and it was good and it mattered. He named the company after his father. Briggs & Son launched at a trade fair 2 years after the divorce, in a booth that was modest and precise, and contained 12 pieces of furniture that stopped people walking past. That was when Claire's attorney called. She had attended the trade fair, not to see Tom, but because she had commercial property clients in the furniture sector, and trade fairs were part of her professional landscape. She had walked past the Briggs & Son booth without registering the name. Then she had looked more closely at the chair. She had stood in front of it for 30 seconds. Then she had looked at the brand name. Then she had walked out of the fair hall and called her attorney from the car park. The call to Tom's attorney came the following week. The toolbox, her attorney explained, had been a marital asset. There was a legal argument, not a strong one, but an argument, that it had been undervalued in the settlement. Claire was prepared to discuss an arrangement. Tom's attorney, who had been his lawyer for 18 months now, and was considerably better than the adequate man who had handled the divorce, listened to the entire proposal. Then she said, "My client's position is that the toolbox was awarded to him by mutual consent, was assessed at no material value by the respondent's own legal team, and has been in his continuous possession since the settlement. He has no interest in revisiting the arrangement." She paused. "Is there anything else?" There was not anything else. Tom was not present for the call. His attorney told him about it afterward, over the phone, in the matter-of-fact way of someone reporting a procedural outcome. He sat with it for a moment. Then he laughed, not bitterly. The actual, surprised laugh of someone who has just received confirmation of something they had half suspected, and finds the confirmation more absurd than satisfying. He was not a man who had been plotting this. He had not opened the toolbox expecting to find something valuable. He had not spent 2 years building a company to make a point to his ex-wife or to anyone else. He had built Briggs & Son because his father had spent 30 years drawing furniture that was worth building, and because Tom was his father's son, and because the work was good. Everything else was circumstance. Briggs & Son grew, not explosively, organically, the way furniture businesses grow when they are built on genuine design rather than marketing. By the end of the 3rd year, the company was in 40 retail locations. By the 4th, they had an international distribution deal. By the 5th, the shelving system patent alone was generating licensing revenue that had made the company's financial advisor use words he had not previously used in Tom's presence. Tom hired 12 people, then 20. Many of them former craftspeople who had been working in an industry that had been contracting, and who responded to the offer of work that valued their skill with a loyalty that made the company's culture something distinctive. He kept a copy of his father's original drawing of the dining chair framed in the workshop. Not the patent filing version, the original, in his father's handwriting with the annotation at the bottom. "For when the time is right. For you, if you ever need them." It had been the right time. He had needed them. Roy, the landlord from the flat above the hardware shop, who had left vegetables on Tom's doorstep through the difficult first winter, came to the company's 5th anniversary celebration because Tom had sent him an invitation and Roy had said he supposed he'd better come. Roy stood in the showroom, looking at the furniture with the careful attention of a retired builder who respected craft. After a while, he said, to nobody in particular. Good joinery. Tom, standing nearby, heard it. Thank you, he said. Roy looked at him. Your dad teach you? Yes, Tom said. Roy nodded, as if that explained something, and went to find the food. Claire had called the toolbox items of no material value. Her lawyer had put it in writing, and in a specific technical sense, at the moment of the settlement, they were right. The box was rusted. The tools were old. There was nothing in the visible portion of the toolbox that would have suggested otherwise. What was in the lower compartment? What his father had placed there deliberately, for a son he knew might one day need them, was not visible to anyone who wasn't paying attention. And that is the thing about the toolbox, the real lesson of it. It wasn't that Tom got lucky. It was that he was the only person in the settlement room who knew to look underneath the tray. Here is the question I want you to sit with. When Claire's attorney called about the toolbox 2 years later, should Tom have offered her anything? Was the settlement fair? Or is this exactly the outcome that happens when you dismiss someone's worth without bothering to understand it? Drop your answer in the comments. I want the real one. And tell me where you're watching from. Like this video. If Tom's story moved you, that like is how more people find it, and it genuinely matters. Hit it. Share this with someone who needs to hear that starting over isn't the end. Subscribe if you haven't. The next story is coming and you want to be here. See you then.